CPAC, pour nous tous.
Hi, welcome to Beyond Politics. I'm Catherine Clark. Ontario Liberal MP Kirsty Duncan is passionate about everything she does, whether that's highland dancing, her academic work, or her work as a scientist. But now she's brought that passion to Parliament Hill, where she's particularly committed to helping eradicate child hunger and neurological diseases. She joins me now to talk all about a very stimulating life beyond politics. Kristy Duncan, welcome to Beyond Politics. It's really great to have you here.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm delighted to be with you.
You know, you've had such an accomplished career so far. You've done so much. You have your fingers in all sorts of different and interesting pots. But I wonder what you were like as a kid.
Well, I'm really blessed. The community that I represent today is the community where I'm born and raised.
Oh, wow, that is wonderful.
It is
to have that tight connection.
I do, and you know, in the spring we had our 50th high school reunion, which was really exciting. And I hate to admit, I was at the school 25 years ago, and they asked me to come back and speak on behalf of all the students. I was thrilled because I had performed in all the shows as a child there. So I knew 2 decades of students, and our most famous alumni was Leona Boyd, and she came back and played.
Isn't that great? Did you have a tight connection with your school? Were you a good, academically gifted student?
I love school.
Really?
Yes. My mother was a phys ed teacher,
right,
and my father worked for the Toronto Board of Education. And in our house, you had to be good in school, but you had to be better in sports.
Oh, really? Honestly?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
My dad was asked to pitch by 6 major league teams.
Wow.
And my brother was a national diver. I was a gymnast. I trained 6 nights a week, 5 hours a night. And
oh
it
my
was,
gosh.
you know, it was a grueling schedule, but as I say, the sport I did is the only sport you get to fly.
You know, that's a really grueling schedule. That's a lot for, I mean, it sounds like you were a household of high achievers, basically.
I have a wonderful family. I am only the second person to go into university in my family. My grandparents probably had about grade 8 education. My mom couldn't afford to go to university, and through actually a death in the family, she did get to go. So education was instilled in us, and then when I had the chance to travel overseas for graduate school, my parents couldn't. That was a hardship on them, and my dad said, I gave up my dream to be a baseball player to look after your grandmother. You will not give up your dream. And they made it happen.
Wow, that's really extraordinary, that kind of commitment to you. That must be a lot for you to also carry with you through your life, too. A motivator.
I'm very blessed. When my father got so sick 2 years ago, I was offered 2 dream positions at the university.
Yeah.
One a full professor, and you don't make that at my age, and the other one a research chair. And my dad had been diagnosed with 2 heart attacks, and the university said, you can't give up these jobs. Dad's sick. What don't you understand? And we went through 8 months of just health battle after a health battle, and cancers and quadruple bypass, and 2 months in hospital. And I have my father. It's the only thing that matters to me.
Wow, that's really... What were your parents like as people when you were little? I mean, how do you remember them?
We were their life. We were absolutely their life. They gave, as my dad said, I was a glorified chauffeur if we weren't going to gymnastics or diving or piano or dancing. But Sunday was family day. We were not allowed to train on Sundays, and that was about going to the Toronto Island. I don't think we missed a weekend as a child.
Wow.
Having a picnic lunch with the family, dinners at the family table, and just really, really supportive parents and a lot of love.
That's very interesting because those are the types of things that memories are made of, right? I mean, those are the things that form a really solid foundation for a child, that consistency, that sense of family involvement.
They loved children, and they would have liked to have had more. So they always borrowed children. When we were growing up, my mom would take family, friends, children for the weekend. There was always children in the house. And I have that same love. I'm not blessed to have children of my own, but I've taught dancing and sports my whole life because I love children. And one of the reasons I got into politics is because children in my riding go to school hungry. And I think it's outrageous in Canada that any child goes to school hungry. I was the vice chair of the breakfast programs. We feed 110,000 children every morning. And in my riding, people work 2 and 3 jobs just to put food on the table. And if the choice is a $5 liter of orange juice and a $2 double liter of orange pop, the choice is clear. Mm-hmm. So one of the reasons I came to Parliament was really to fight to end child hunger, and the other big reason I came was to fight for neurological disease.
When you were a little kid, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
I was going to be an artist and a dance teacher.
Okay.
My whole life.
Well, you're definitely a dance teacher. Are you an artist too?
I have, yes.
Great.
I don't find much time to paint these days.
Right. But
watercolors, oils, pen and ink. I wanted to live in a croft in Scotland on Skye and paint. That was my dream, and maybe one day I actually get that opportunity.
I don't know, you might go crazy for lack of activity, truthfully.
Oh, the mountains and the ocean and canvas and some brushes. Be a good life.
Yeah. So, given that you wanted to be an artist and a dance teacher, and then you went to university, at what stage did you decide or realize that you were probably meant to be something a bit, or to be more than just an artist and a dance teacher?
Oh, I think being an artist and a dance teacher
was fine.
I think I'm a consummate artsy. I really am. And it was in grade 13.
Yeah.
There were no art schools when I was growing up, so the principals would pull me out of classes to teach me to paint from the age of 10. And when I was in grade 13, I always painted with oils. We found out I was allergic to acrylics. And at that time...
How did you find out? I mean, what were the symptoms that you were showing?
Severe asthmatic.
Okay.
And at that time, the university wouldn't make concessions, so in May of grade 13, I learned I wasn't going to be an artist. And that's devastating.
Oh, wow.
It was absolutely devastating. And I thought, now what?
What do you mean they wouldn't make a concession? I mean, could you not have painted in other mediums? Could you not have...
Well, you're in studio
okay.
all day, and you would be surrounded by people who would be using acrylics.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't tolerate them. So my mom said, well, take what you like. And I took anthropology and geography, and I fell in love with both subjects. And then I wanted to go to graduate school, and my dream had been since the age of 9 to study in Scotland. And as I said, I got that opportunity. My parents said, you have to go.
Right.
And to go to school in a city I love. Edinburgh dates back 1,000 years. There's the castle, there's beautiful Arthur's Seat, and you walk the streets, of my ancestors. They always call Edinburgh the city of bagpipes. You hear bagpipes wherever you go, and my mom always laughs. She says, you heard bagpipes in our house every day. Why is Edinburgh so special?
Probably because of that. It's like being at home.
It does feel like being at home. And I really looked at environment and health when I was doing my PhD. And then I just wanted to teach at the university again, because it's always about children, it's about students, it's about inspiring them to achieve their greatest dreams.
So tell me about that, because one of the things that can be tricky when you have this great vision of what you would like to see others achieve is that they can disappoint you. So do you ever encounter that as a teacher? You know, you've done all this training, you're passionate about these subjects, you feel you can share it with these kids, these young people around you. But how do you deal with the fact that, you know, we're a culture of kids who may not be as engaged as you are in these issues? How do you overcome that disappointment, or have you even encountered it?
I've never had that
Really?
disappointment.
Oh,
ever.
Isn't that great?
I love my students, and some of them from 2 decades ago I'm still in touch with. They invite me to their weddings. They tell me when they have their babies. They send me the pictures. I loved my students. I had a great experience. About a month ago I was asked to come and speak at the University of Guelph for a conference linking Celtic culture and Aboriginal culture. A woman came up at the end and said, I talked a lot about what Aboriginal Canadians have done for this country. And she came up and she said, thank you for what you said, and you don't remember me. I said, I absolutely do. I taught her at the University of Windsor. I said, when I went up to the Arctic, you gave me those that pair of gloves that you made for me. And she said, yes. And we just hugged, and
oh, wow.
It was just such a magical moment.
It must be really neat to be able to have those magical moments on an ongoing basis, because you'd be running into your students everywhere now.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I run into them when I travel.
Sure.
And, as I said, children just make the world a better place. They are a blessing.
When you were away, when you were abroad, were you lonely?
I quickly immersed myself in the culture. I was teaching dancing. I was teaching at the university, and I was teaching in the gym, aerobics and weightlifting, and I taught diving there and trampolining. I missed my family very, very much. They were good in coming, my friends, my family coming over every once in a while to see me.
Right.
But Scotland is absolutely my second home. And I hadn't been back in 10 years, and 2 summers ago I went. And you know, you've been away too long when you drive down Princess Street and the tears are pouring down your face, and I won't stay away ever again.
Did you ever consider making it your permanent home?
It will always be my second home.
Okay.
When I come home to Canada, there was no feeling like touching down and knowing you're in Canada. Until you've been away, you don't understand that feeling, that longing for this country, for the culture, for the people, for our values.
Now, you decided you came back, you were a medical geographer, and I have to get you to define what that means, because when I first saw it, I thought, I have no idea what that means. So I assume that perhaps some of our viewers might not either. What is a medical geographer?
I really looked at how the environment affects human health, and particularly I was interested in climate change and its impacts on health. And like all young graduate students, I was going to set out to prove that climate change didn't exist. This is
really, you were? That's what
I'm embarrassed
so
to tell you that. I'm really embarrassed to tell you that. 6 months into the PhD, I understood the error of my ways, and this was, really 89, 90, and just seeing, the amount of evidence that was accumulating, and understanding that this could potentially be the defining issue of our generation. Past generations built countrywide railways. They fought in World War I and World War II. And growing up, I grew up in the Legion. I danced for a military regiment for 25 years of my life. And I've seen our veterans struggle from their wheelchairs when our anthem is played. And I always love to talk to our veterans, and they explained to me that they didn't go to war for their generation, that they went for my mom's and for mine. And they said 100,000 never came home. What will you do for your generation? And I've never forgotten those words. So profound respect for our Legion, and that we have to give back.
Yeah. You organized a really fascinating expedition at one point to Norway. First to Alaska, I think, and then to Norway. Why? What were you trying to do?
I wanted to find the cause of the 1918 Spanish flu, which was history's greatest killer. It killed upwards of 50 million people. Numbers probably closer to 100 million. Killed more people than the Black Death, the First World War, or AIDS has to date. And I wanted us to be prepared should we have another pandemic of influenza. And so I was searching for bodies that were buried in the permafrost. I hoped that the frozen ground would preserve the body and the virus. And that if we could find that virus, we'd make a better flu vaccine, and we could test our drugs against history's deadliest disease so that we would be ready. I took a team of 17 men, not the smartest thing I've ever done.
Why were they all men?
It just worked out that way. Yeah. They were the leading experts in their fields. I was their junior by 25 years. There were some challenges. How do you want to be treated, as a woman or as a scientist? The two are not mutually exclusive. Being photographed from your ankles upwards. I think the worst experience, though, was being asked to lie on a sports car in front of a cemetery.
Nice.
There were challenges.
I bet there were.
The good part of it was that I was able to honor every promise I made to Norway, that I was able to do the project. It was a decade of my life, safely and ethically, and I was given the American Biological Safety Award for outstanding contributions to biological safety, and that was a tremendous honor. But we did the work, and it was done right.
When I was reading about the expedition, the first thing that came to my mind was, how would you become aware that there were these bodies buried in the permafrost? I mean, how does this kind of knowledge circulate, and to whom does it circulate?
What my grandmother said, I did not raise my granddaughter to do this. I spent 2 years searching for bodies. It was a long piece of detective work. I started in Alaska, and then a friend of mine was returning from Norway, and he mentioned permafrost. Well, I became excited, like you do when you hear about permafrost. And I guess that if people had traveled from Norway up to Spitsbergen, which is 500 miles from the North Pole, they may have brought the disease with them. And so I wrote to the Norwegian authorities who said, fascinating idea, but you have an impossible task ahead of you. There are no government records, because this part of the Arctic does not become part of Norway till the 1920s. There are no church records, because there was no minister there. And there are no company records. But I managed to track down these diaries. And sure enough, they record the names and ages of 7 young men who died of Spanish flu and were buried in the permafrost.
Oh, wow. You must have, obviously with, respecting the dignity of these 7 people, it must have really been a remarkable moment when you realized that.
Well, after 2 years of searching, you're right, I should have been elated, but it now had a face. It had 7 faces, and they were just as young as I was. They were 18 to 28 years of age when they died, when I first went to Norway. And I spent 3 years thinking about who these young men were, what were their dreams. I too had traveled abroad. I had dreams. And then you stand on a barren hillside in front of 6 white crosses, and it's overwhelming. And I made a promise at their graves that if I was allowed to do this research, it would be done safely and ethically. And later, when I did the expedition, I buried a long-stem yellow rose. When I made that pledge, I buried a long-stem yellow rose at each of their graves. Years later, when we did the expedition, we found one of those roses my pledge to them that this would be done right.
Oh, isn't that a neat story, too? After all of this very exceptional and interesting and unusual work. No, but I mean, what would make you want to run federally? Because that's such a leap. It's such a different path. You talked about the importance of eradicating hunger, but you are also totally changing your own life by taking on this new political challenge. Why did you want to do it?
One, I love to serve. My whole life has been about serving, whether it was my students, whether it was the volunteer work I did. I sat on many boards. I really like to serve. Number one, because children in my riding were starving, and that's unacceptable to me. Two, because I wanted to fight for neurological disease.
Right.
We know it intimately in my family. My beautiful cousin, my family called her Cinderella. She's stunning, she's vibrant, and she was struck by MS.
Right.
And my cousin went from perfect to a quadriplegic in about 5 years. When you get a neurological disease, if you get a heart problem in this country, you can get a new valve, you can get a bypass, you can even get a new heart. And if you develop a neurological problem, there is very little help. And I wanted to come here to fight for this, to change this. And the third reason I came is because of what that veteran said to me all those years ago. What will you do for the next generations? Those are my three reasons.
When you told your family that this is what you were planning to do, was the reaction, hey, great idea, or?
No.
Okay.
They've known this for a decade.
Have they?
I've always wanted to do this, and I don't think I've had any family member or any friend tell me.
You've always wanted to run?
I've always wanted to run. And everyone says, you're too nice for politics. You're too ethical. You know what? That's what we need in politics.
Yes, I've never understood it when people say that.
Thank you. Either do I.
Yeah.
We need good, committed people with strong values. And I think one of the things when you come here is that you learn that you may have different values, you may have different starting systems, but everybody who comes here profoundly cares. They profoundly care about their community, and they want to be in service.
Having come, so we have to talk about how your family felt, though. Were they supportive at least, or were they? My family eventually came around to accepting this. Okay.
And my parents were at the election office, the campaign office every day, and as were my closest friends. From my university, I call him my second brother. He was there every day from the time that office opened till the time it closed.
You had a tough campaign too.
I did.
Yeah. Did you ever question your reasons for running?
No. I really wanted to do this. I want to serve Etobicoke North. Not many people get to serve where they're born and raised. I know every inch of that riding. I went to its schools, and during the election, it was funny. People would test me. They'd say, "You're not from Etobicoke." And I'd say, and one guy said, "I am." And what school did you go to? I said, "Dixon Grove." And John, we were in the same class. And he said, Kirsty Duncan? And I said, yes. So we had a number of those moments throughout the campaign.
Was it, despite the ups and downs of it, was it a positive experience for you?
Oh, as I said, I know every inch of that riding. It is not until you go door to door that you know your community, you know the people. We had clipboards, and every 5 or 6 houses, people may not come forth, but if you ask them if they needed help, so many people had an issue. And just being able to help during the election, if that was all the serving I got to do, I felt humbled to be able to do that.
You're here in Ottawa now. You're here a lot.
Yes.
And you are still an athlete. I mean, both at heart and physically, you are still an athlete. But how do you manage to combine those two when you're not at home? You can't maintain necessarily a regular regimen. What do you do?
It's sports is what keeps me whole.
Okay.
It really does. I need to have the mind active, and I need the body to be active. And my whole life is about, promoting health and wellness. Marathoning and triathlons have been a huge part of my life for the last decade. And when I'm tired, there is nothing better than getting out on the street and pounding the pavement.
Oh gosh, that sounds like a perfect remedy. I can't imagine anything worse than being tired and going running.
No, you know what it is, because so often in this job, you go from meeting to meeting to meeting.
Yeah.
I need time to think. I need time to process, to put things together. And if I can't solve a problem, I go running. At the first mile, I start to relax. And by the time I come home, something I couldn't figure out, it's like, oh, the answer is so easy. Because you finally allowed yourself to relax, and the brain works on it.
Are you still teaching highland dancing?
I still have some students. As I said, I'm not blessed to have children of my own, and my dancers are my life. I have them from age 4, and then they go off to university, and it's heartbreaking for me. I have to turn over these beautiful children who I feel that they're my own, and to the university, and hope they're going to be as well looked after.
If you, you're obviously going to go on to do other fascinating things. This career is important, and it is fulfilling. But if you had the opportunity to do something different later, much later, what do you think it might be?
Right now, this is all I want. I want to serve my community, and I want to serve my country. And I have a lot I'm working on in Parliament with neurological disease and with our veterans, and I am really committed to getting those ideas through. I think you probably know I've been fighting very hard to get the liberation treatment for MS here in Canada for clinical trials. I'm in touch with 1,000 patients across this country. They have my personal email, and they know they can email me any day, and I will respond to them. And I'm up to 188 have now been treated. They're doing well. I've gone to all the scientific conferences. I know the facts. I treated looking at liberation the way I planned Norway for a decade of my life. I know all the facts. I want to know why the government did not look at this the way I did. To look at 7 published reports is not the way to do science. I have followed this for 2.5 years.
Well, I do wish you the very best of luck. I appreciate you taking the time to be here today. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
It has been such an honor to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.